This video is sponsored by the Chinese Communist Party. Democracy. It's a hassle, isn't it? Unfortunately, someone has to be in charge, and you're one of those people, a politician. And I bet you think you know an awful lot about politics. Well, that's super. But most people don't, and sadly, they're the ones who are going to be voting for you. Whether you're fighting the establishment or desperately clinging on to power, these are the people that you need to persuade that you're the one for the job. So this is how to win an election, by any means necessary. The average voter isn't stupid, but they vote stupid because politics is boring, infuriating, boring and disappointing. And boring. So to capture people's attention, you're going to need a short, punchy political slogan, preferably 4 words or less.
Ike for president, Ike for president, Ike for president, Ike for president. You like Ike, I like Ike, everybody likes Ike.
I like Ike, yes we can, Labour isn't working, and my personal favourite, Kevin 07. Slogans aren't the only thing you want to keep short either. You need to be able to come up with policies that you can sum up in short sentences too. Most of those smelly meat ballots aren't going to read your manifesto. In fact, most of them probably think Manifesto is a South American soccer player. Is Manifesto up the right side? Manifesto's coming into the penalty box! Manifesto scores! Manifesto scores! Oh yes, Manifesto with a goal! Yeah! Everybody knows that politics is just showbiz for ugly people. So when a real-life movie star runs for office, he's playing on easy mode with cheat codes on. Ronald Reagan was the master of the political soundbite.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
But by his 1984 run for re-election, he was the oldest president in United States history. The man looked like a raisin with a retirement portfolio. During debates, he looked weak and doddering, sometimes misunderstanding the premise of basic questions. But when the topic of his age came up, this is how he answered.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Boom! The crowd goes bananas. The moderators can't get a word in. Even fucking Mondale laughs. Afterwards, it was this moment that was replayed over and over again on television news and talk shows. And hundreds, 1,000 times as many voters consume debates this way, through clips carved out for them by media organisations. For this lazy majority, the rest of the debate may as well have not happened. So get your zingers in, because that's all that most people will even hear.
Here's Johnny!
Here's the thing about voters. They're as scared of you as you are of them. And you have to make sure they're even scaredier of what might happen if you don't win. And to do that, you must master the dark art of the political attack ad. In 1964, Lyndon B. Johnson was running for re-election against Barry Goldwater. And some people were a bit worried that Goldwater would be somewhat trigger-happy with America's nuclear arsenal after suggesting that he would use them in Vietnam. The Johnson campaign leapt on this unfortunate soundbite and released this blockbuster commercial, commonly known just as Daisy.
8, 9, 9.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
The mental image of their children being reduced to irradiated ash really got people shaking in their voting booths. LBJ won re-election by a pretty decent majority and remained on the White House toilet for another 4 years. Fear is the best antidote to apathy. Have you ever seen someone getting chased by a Rottweiler look indifferent about it? That's why the Law and Order ticket is always so effective.
Bush and Dukakis on crime. Bush supports the death penalty for first-degree murderers. Dukakis not only opposes the death penalty, he allowed first-degree murderers to have weekend passes from prison. One was Willie Horton, who murdered a boy in a robbery, stabbing him 19 times. Despite a life sentence, Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison.
This is the infamous Willie Horton campaign, run by George Bush Sr.'s team in 1988 in their battle against Michael Michael Dukis? Michael Duck Kiss? And they doubled down on the next ad, where they virtually suggested he was handing out free balaclavas at the exit of his revolving door prison for the criminally rapey. Though for many people, it was this soundbite disaster that turned Dukakis 88 into Dookie Carcass Never.
If Kitty Dukakis were raped and murdered, would you favor an irrevocable death penalty for the killer?
No, I don't, Bernard, and I think you know that I've opposed the death penalty during all of my life. I don't see any evidence that it's a deterrent, and I think there are better and more effective ways to deal with violent crime. We've done so in my own state, and it's one of the reasons why we have had the biggest drop in crime of any industrial state in America, why we have the lowest murder rate of any industrial state in America.
A dry, affectless answer to an emotional question. Only the politically obsessed vote on policy. Everyone else votes with their gooey, fallible feelings. And what people felt when they heard this answer was that Michael Bukaki Bonitis didn't care about the issue. He learnt that there are no prizes for second place in politics, and that most people won't even remember your name. While it's important to stimulate your own base, it's also important to mash your opponent's base until it's flaccid and unfeeling. You can do this by making it difficult to vote, using complex or expensive voter registration laws that target demographics that are likely to vote for your opponent. Or you can just stop your rivals from registering in the first place, expertly demonstrated by former Madagascan president Marc Ravalomanana, who refused to let his opponent's plane land in 2006, stopping him from being able to register his candidacy in time for the election. Ravalomanana! But even if those pesky voters do make it into their little democracy coffins, there are still ways to make sure their vote doesn't count. And for that, we turn to the Tsar of diet democracy himself, Vladimir Putin. Since the year 2000, Vladimir Putin has won 4 presidential elections in Russia, each time with a throbbing majority. He achieves this partly through good old ballot stuffing, repeatedly captured on film during the 2017 Russian election. Running against Vladimir Putin is like running into a wood chipper. He habitually intimidates, imprisons, and just recently poisons his opposition. And it's not even an election year. ABC, baby, always be campaigning. In 2016, prominent opposition figure Yevgeny Yurtsev was handed a 12-year prison sentence on corruption charges. His sentencing was broadcast on national TV as a warning to others who might fancy their electoral chances. Vladdy Poots is so good at winning elections that he's even turned his attention to contests outside of Russia, most notably in the Ukraine. In 2002, it was Putin-backed incumbent Viktor Yanukovych versus former president Viktor Yushchenko. But in areas where Yushchenko was likely to win, something strange happened. An unusual number of ballots appeared to have no marking on them at all and were subsequently voided. That's because voters were handed pens with invisible ink that will have vanished 4 minutes after they were slipped into the ballot box. Now, some of these techniques might be considered unethical. But if you're worried about that, what are you doing in politics? Go work for a charity. But you might also say that it's ineffective. If a YouTuber with a bleached brain is aware of these tactics, then they can't have really, worked. But Putin wants you to know he's cheating, and he especially wants Russians who don't like him to know he's cheating. Why? Because they will think their vote is worthless, and apathetic voters don't show up on polling day. Number 4, center the conversation on you. A modern election isn't about who's right or wrong, it's about who gets the most airtime. That's why the best way to win an election is to have won one already. In nearly all democratic countries, incumbents have a significantly higher chance of getting re-elected than their challengers do of unseating them. This is particularly striking in the US House of Representatives, where incumbents have an 80 to 90% chance of being re-elected. This is despite the fact that, according to public policy polling, Congress regularly rates lower in public opinion polls than things like traffic jams, cockroaches, and Nickelback. And yes, people do regularly poll the popularity of cockroaches. for some reason. The thing is, incumbents are always getting up to all sorts of interesting shit. They're in government, whereas the opposition can only sit back and react. But even outsiders can find a way of making it all about themselves. Before 1994, Silvio Berlusconi had never held public office in Italy. But he did have a useful career as a godlike media tycoon. Berlusconi was the head of the first and only Italian TV empire, owning 3 of the major networks, which were all transformed into a 24-hour Berlusconi bonanza in the lead up to the election.
Tende la mano, che forza si dà, Presidente siamo con te, meno male che Silvio c'è.
He would go on to achieve 3 separate election victories, and it wouldn't even matter which party he ran for, because Berlusconi was an expert in getting people to talk about his favourite topic, Berlusconi.
It's suggesting that he might not obey the law. Why the hell should any of the rest of us? Answer me that, Mr. Cummings. Or do you not have an answer?
I think you're not a very good journalist, mate. I'm sorry.
Really? Well...
This scruffy, egg-headed goon is Dominic Cummings. He has never won an election, he's never even ran for office, and yet he is probably the best political campaigner in modern British history. During the 2016 referendum to decide whether the UK should leave the European Union or not, Cumdog was the campaign director for Vote Leave. He was fighting against the government and every major opposition party, and yet he still won. Why? Because he knew how to turn his rivals into pliable meat marionettes who will parrot your every talking point. This was Dominic Cummings' big red Trojan horse, the infamous NHS bus. It sputtered around the country during the referendum, appearing in the background of every Vote Leave photo op. To people who were unsympathetic to the campaign, it was big, dumb bullshit. It was a bus covered in lies that could be deconstructed by anyone with half a brain. But that was the point. As Sun Tzu says in The Art of War, hold out baits to entice your enemy, feign disorder, and then crush him. As soon as the bus was rolled out, every left-ish media organisation and Remain group jumped on it, tearing it apart with fart-sniffing smug intensity, spreading Vote Leave's message across the country 1,000,000 times faster than the double-decker dildo could travel itself. Lies can be very useful. Even if most people don't believe them, some will. Ideally though, it's better to spread them without them being traced back to you, and that brings me on to our 5th tip. Technology! In the United States, 40 to 50% of voting age people don't vote at all. And this is true of most modern democracies. These people don't watch the news, they don't read your witty tweets about tax reform, and they probably don't even know who you are. They are the true silent majority, and if you want to win, you've got to make some of them loud and mad. Luckily, data mining is making it easier than ever to access these gullible, politically ignorant mouth breathers. Sorry, let the mask slip a bit there, but you know, that's why you're the politician, eh? You can keep it down. Companies now use data mined from social media sites, mostly Facebook, to find these traditional non-voters and target them with messages and ads that are tailored for their specific prejudices. And maybe you can get these people to vote if they can also summon the mental energy required to hold a pencil the right way up. However, since the Cambridge Analytica scandal and the public nature of social media marketing, people are a little wiser to these algorithmic shenanigans. That's why the real party is now on WhatsApp. This is Jair Bolsonaro. He ran a strong populist campaign in Brazil's 2018 presidential election. In a country plagued by crime, he knew which tune to play.
Os caras vão morrer na rua igual barata, pô.
And boy howdy does he know how to capture people's attention.
Eu não vou esperar fuder minha família toda. Todo mundo armado. Que o povo armado jamais será escravizado.
He also ran as a relative outsider during a time when the Brazilian political establishment was skimming more off the top than a barber with Parkinson's. And it was a dramatic election. with Bolsonaro's main opponent being dragged off by the police before the debates even started, and Jair himself being stabbed on the campaign trail. He lost 40% of his blood, and it could have been fatal. Unfortunately, YouTube won't let me show you the footage, but trust me when I say it's hilarious. He's all like, oh my god! Anyway, according to a São Paulo newspaper, Bolsonaro's team paid digital marketing firms millions to spread misinformation through WhatsApp messaging groups. These firms use devices capable of sending 300,000 messages at a time. That's the electoral equivalent of carpet bombing. Bolsonaro's team weren't subtle about it either. They spread bold-faced lies, notably claiming that rival Fernando Haddad had supplied schools with penis-shaped baby bottles to encourage the spread of homosexuality. Brazil is super homophobic, so that worked. WhatsApp is now every political campaigner's wettest dream. It is the new frontier of bullshit. But you do have to stay ahead of the curve. That's why deep fakes are so exciting. Soon they are going to be sophisticated enough that you're going to be able to get custom visual sound bites of your opponent saying whatever you want. Material reality has always been the most stubborn obstacle for the best political campaigners, and soon it won't be a problem. If you've been following all these steps to the letter, then congratulations, you're now the leader of a potentially compromised democracy. So my final tip is this. The best election is no election. As long as you have a steady stream of natural resource revenue, or just at least enough to pay your security staff, then you never have to have another election again. And who cares what those nerds at the UN think? What does UN even stand for anyway? Useless nobodies? This is how leaders are announced in China. They just show up, accompanied by monotonous applause and crowds of people who definitely know what's going on. There are no slogans, no debates, no flag waving or term limits. And best of all, there's no shit-covered, dead-eyed, open-mouthed voters in sight. And all is